And welcome to this edition of the Native News Update on this Friday, June 3rd. I'm your host for today's program, Paul DeMain. Many of the stories viewed here can also be found at our website at IndianCountryNews.com, and here are some of the news stories for the day from the Associated Press and other Native news sources. The flood-soaked Crow Reservation and counties across Montana were making repairs this week to water-damaged facilities while preparing for another round of high water that could arrive in the coming weeks. Most of the state's rivers were at or below flood level after last week's deluge caused widespread flooding, the National Weather Service is reporting. However, an expected rise in temperatures next week could increase snowpack melting and river levels, but likely won't cause major flooding, according to meteorologist Keith Meyer. River rises previously projected in southwestern southwestern Montana in the days ahead are also likely to be less than originally expected, as forecasters noted less rain than anticipated, lower temperatures, and less runoff from the melting snowpacks. And that impacts both Flathead and the Crow Indian reservations out there. The Navajo Nation began its celebration of Treaty Days on June 1st. The events honor those who lost their lives during a forest relocation of thousands of Navajos known as the Long Walk. Navajo leaders signed an agreement with the U.S. government on June 1st, 1868, to end the 4-year imprisonment of Bosque Redondo in eastern New Mexico. Those who couldn't keep up along the journey were killed. Disease, the harsh winters, and unfamiliarity with how to prepare foods also led to numerous deaths. Navajo Fair manager Norman Bowman says the celebration is meant to embrace the history of the Navajo people and preserve their culture and traditions. This weekend's events in the tribal capital of Window Rock, Arizona include a rodeo, carnival, traditional games, gourd dancing, a powwow, and country western dance. All right, go Navajos, go. Assistant Secretary Indian Affairs Larry Echohawk today announced that the Bureau of Indian Affairs and Director Keith Moore had selected Chris Redman as president of Haskell Indian Nations University, the 127-year-old facility there, operated and administered by the Bureau of Indian Affairs as a secondary institution for American Indian and Alaska Natives from across the nation, 565 federally recognized tribes. Redman is an enrolled member of the Chickasaw Nation of Oklahoma, was an education specialist with the BIA who had served as Haskell's acting president in times of need at other times in history. His appointment will become effective on July 3rd, 2011. And today we talk with Shoshone Bannock columnist Mark Trahant. Yep, politics and budget cuts, and he says, warning, more budget cuts are on their way. Mark Trahant, give us a little update about what you're seeing coming out of Washington, D.C. on the political scene.
Well, let me start with the context, because I think for tribes it's awful important, and that's we're going into an era of severe contraction where the federal government is going to be shrinking. This week, the White House called in first Republicans for a day and then Democrats for a day in the Congress, and the idea was to get a deal on deficit, raising the deficit limit so that the federal government could keep on borrowing money. The Republicans' price for that is severe budget cuts, and the only question is going to be how severe, because at some point the Democrats are going to have to play ball in order to get the debt limit lifted.
Right. They're talking about, I thought, trillions.
That was one number they were throwing around. And the thing about it is they keep saying the private sector is going to pick this up. Today, the jobs report came out, and governments across the country, whether it's state, local, a lot of school districts have been cutting jobs, a negative number of 29,000 jobs in a job report. And you're going to see that just increase as we go forward.
How can the private sector pick that up in development? The theory is that if you cut the budget, everyone's got a lot of money to do something, but it seems to me that the same people that got all the money, and they're either going to do it now or they're going to do it later. Are the people who have money in the business community holding this whole economic development hostage over a Democratic president? Is that what it's about?
Well, that's the argument they're making. I think there are some serious flaws with that. The first being that we've been in a severe credit contraction for now a number of years. And even with QE, the stimulus money the Fed has pumped in, credit has continued to decline. And so business is not going to be able to pick up that slack without some sort of access to credit. The second problem that they're not getting to is even in all that optimistic scenario about private sector, nowhere near the jobs being created are going to come from the private sector. In the first place, we're not investing in things we need to invest in, such as higher education. And so how can you create jobs if there's not a ready workforce for those jobs?
I'm trying to imagine how that impacts the reservation where you already have high unemployment. Government is shrinking. Tribal government's going to shrink perhaps. Is it an opportunity to bring something to the reservation that's different in terms of job creation, or does it mean another outflux of tribal people to the cities to try to find a job amongst all the other people that already don't have one?
I hope so. I think it's been a problem. Excuse me. It's been a problem for the past few years. I look out from my window and I see a new hotel project going up, and I just have my fingers crossed that that is going to be the kind of jobs that last through this process, because I think it's going to be very painful. One of the problems for Indian country and all this is there's no private sector. I mean, Indian country communications is what, the second or third largest employer in your region? And that's great, but that's not going to create the kind of jobs you need to drive an economy.
Right. At one point, Indian Country Communications was the largest private sector business on the reservation. All the rest were ma and pa stores and bait shops and things like that. And there really hasn't been the evolution of a private sector on the majority of the reservations. I mean, you can probably pick and choose some of those reservations where there was opportunities and long term. What about tribal casinos? I'm reading a report that in 2007 they had a 10% vendor set aside for Native American businesses. As of 2011, it's 2.5%. Are they a key to that? And do they have to come out of their little shell and help develop those businesses, or business as usual, where all the money flows off of the reservation without bouncing into the tribal economy?
I think the data suggests that tribal casinos to this point have not contributed in a circular fashion the way they ought to. They're not making sure the contracts stay within Indian country. They're importing talent and they're importing business contracts. And I think that's something that really needs to change. We really need to take care of ourselves first if we're going into this period of which I think is a decline of significant proportions.
In other words, we got to think out of the box and help put Native people into those businesses, because otherwise all the regular people show up. I mean,
Exactly.
I don't want to say there's anything wrong with it, but the Coke truck shows up and they deliver Coke, and the fuel that comes to heat the place comes from the typical non-Native owned fuel plant, all the way down on the line. And it seems to me that if there's a if there's $100 billion of profit, 2.5% of that last year went to Native vendors, and in 2007 they had a goal of 10%. They haven't been able to achieve it at the casino level, let alone at the tribal government infrastructure level. So there may be jobs there if we can incubate the people to do them.
Well, and you think about it as a metaphor, and if Indian country can't do this within ourselves, how can we demand the federal government or any other entity do it?
Indeed. Well, we'll have to see what happens. We want to watch that budget deficit ceiling. We want to see where the $1 trillion in cuts are coming. We're waiting for some job creation somehow. We'll talk to you again next week, probably, or
Sounds
maybe
good.
the week after. Or
Okay.
sometime. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Paul.
And now we take you for some clips of the Southern Water Walkers as they moved along on Highway 27 just north of Ladysmith, Wisconsin, headed toward the Lakoutere Ojibwe Reservation village of New Post, where they will spend the night of June 3rd before moving through the reservation into the Honor the Earth Powwow Grounds for a social potluck and meet and greet feast and all that from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. on June 4th. The Southern Water Walk had the distinction of a visit from a Ho-Chunk elder in her 80s today who walked some distance. Camille White Rabbit, the wife of the late Reverend Mitchell White Rabbit, assisted water walkers and moved that pail of salt water headed to the Bad River Reservation north a couple of hundred more feet. The western and northern water walks will be converging this weekend for celebration as well in Duluth, Minnesota, where they will move east together, while the eastern water walkers have moved west through the Sault Ste. Marie, Canada and U.S. region. All four water walk groups and their pails of water from the Atlantic, Pacific, Hudson Bay, and Gulf of Mexico come together for a weekend of activities on the Bad River Reservation, with the water walkers coming through Ashland on Friday, June 10th, starting at the Northern Wisconsin Visitor Center at Highways 13 and 2 around 8 a.m. that morning. The public is welcome to help out, watch, and walk as they enter the Bad River Reservation and east into the old Odena Powwow grounds.
Bonjour, nagmo maingin Dishnakas, Wabashation Dodam, Jibboy Queen Down, Dishning Zone Dale, and Dishna Day Wanaclay. My English name is Sharon Day, and I'm the lead walker for the South, and we're very happy to be so close to our destination. We have, I don't know, maybe 90 more miles to go or something like that. So it's a beautiful day to be walking, beautiful day to be walking for the water. English.
Bonjour. So, this walk has been a really fine thing for me to do for my children and my grandchildren, my children and grandchildren yet to come, and it's the least I can do to help life go forward and to move life in the direction that it's supposed to move, and it's in good healthy lifestyle. We can't live without water. Water is our life. You can think about us out here. Think about all these beautiful people, young people who are walking for your life, so that you can have a good, clean water to drink for your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren and your great-great-grandchildren yet to come, so that they can have a life too. Miigwech.
My name is Laurie Lemieux. I'm from Bad River. Jawa Mashkode Bijiki Kwem Mashkisibi Nujuma Makwadonem. And I've been walking with these women since Iowa. And I'm from Bad River, and it's Bad River or bust. So we're on our way home.
Hi, I'm Erin. I'm from Eau Claire, and I'm just doing part of a day for walking to help out.
Hi, I'm Eileen. I'm from Duluth. This is my 7th day walking, and we got a maj.
Where are you from?
Duluth.
Duluth, Minnesota?
Duluth, Minnesota.
And that is the latest roundup of news from Indian Country on this edition of the Native News Update. We want to thank you all for being with us today. Come back again soon. Miigwech.